the altar of Ascendance. Today we're going to talk about trust, specifically what happens when the most trusted man in your life, the one who promised you salvation, is secretly planning your damnation. This is the extended, terrifying story of Father Silas Vane and his decades-long meticulous plan to unlock the end times. Silas Vane was perfect, handsome, impeccably dressed, with a sermon delivery that was both intellectually rigorous and profoundly comforting. He was the moral anchor of his entire city, but the man beneath the cloth had experienced a terrible truth. In his mind, he had witnessed the inevitable. This world was a corrupted, failed draft, and he was chosen to facilitate its necessary demolition. Silas believed the current concept of God was a lie. He didn't worship the devil, he simply accepted the Antichrist as the necessary wrecking ball, the ultimate catalyst for purification. His task was to prepare the spiritual soil. He did this by leading a hyper-secretive group, the Cult of Silence. Their belief was simple. To tear a hole in the world's spiritual protections, they had to systematically murder and thus corrupt the purest souls around them. He needed to destroy the very concept of virtue. This spiritual corruption was the key, the Aetheric Lock. His victims were always his own. The first was Mrs. Helen Dwyer, a kind, elderly widow who represented selfless charity. Silas lured her into the sacristy for a late-night consultation. There he performed the ritual, twisting the Latin prayers into a mockery of the sacrament. He extinguished her goodness. Her death was ruled a sudden, tragic heart attack. And Silas? He delivered her moving eulogy, his sorrow genuine, the sorrow of a monster mourning the passing of a useful tool. The pattern continued, quiet and relentless. Father Michael, the bright, diligent deacon, vanished, ruled a mental breakdown. Silas had neutralized diligence. Sister Marie, a woman of total chastity, died from a mysterious, virulent fever that defied doctors. Mr. Henderson, the wise treasurer of impeccable temperance, ruled a suicide by poison. With each murder, a piece of the church's spiritual foundation was chipped away. The atmosphere grew heavy, desperate. The surviving congregation didn't know what they were feeling. Only that tragedy was stalking their sanctuary, and so they clung tighter to the one man who remained unshaken, Father Vane. He was simultaneously the killer and their shepherd. As the evil amplified within St. Jude's, the world outside began to mirror the decay. A devastating global plague, economic collapse that crushed the spirit of nations. Governments failed. Order dissolved into panic. The faithful, globally, were crying out for a sign. Silas knew his window was open. The chaos proved his theory. He called for a global vigil of repentance, televised worldwide from the high altar of St. Jude's on Christmas Eve. But there was one final virtue, one last spiritual pillar to collapse: faith. He chose Elias Thorne, the aging caretaker whose belief was absolute. Silas lured him into the catacombs beneath the altar, claiming to show him a newly discovered relic. It was there, in the cold, dusty dark, that Silas whispered the final, fatal lie. "Your faith is absolute, Elias. It is the final key. You will be the most blessed of all to usher in his presence." The final sacrificial blood, mixed with holy water, was poured onto the foundation stone of the Basilica. The Aetheric Lock was sprung. The breach was open. When Silas emerged for the vigil, the change was startling. He was incandescent, radiating a raw, terrifying power. His sermon began as comfort, but his voice soon deepened, resonating with an unnatural boom. "The world has failed," he roared. "You sought answers in your technology, your wealth. You were not worthy of this creation. The suffering ends tonight." Then he gestured outside. From the limousine stepped Alexander Volkov, a new, mysterious global political figure who had miraculously solved crises and promised total, absolute order. Silas Vane turned to the camera, his eyes burning with ecstatic, unholy zeal. "Behold, this is not the devil, you foolish children. This is the Ascended One, your true shepherd. This is the Antichrist, and he is here to save you." The world, desperate and broken, didn't question. They knelt. The end times had arrived, delivered by the hands of the man they trusted the most. The skies darkened within hours. Satellites failed. Oceans surged against their shores with no warning. Across every time zone, people felt it, an immense pressure, like the weight of God's hand pressing down on the planet. Alexander Volkov's face filled every surviving screen. His voice was calm, reassuring. He promised safety, food, order, and millions surrendered their freedom willingly, grateful to trade obedience for survival. Churches overflowed, prisons emptied, armies laid down their arms, and behind every act of salvation, the same invisible bargain was being signed, comfort in exchange for the soul. Father Silas Vane was never seen again. Some say he was consumed by the power he unleashed. Others believe he was rewarded, taken alive into whatever wasteland waits beyond the veil. What remains certain is this: evil didn't arrive with fire and monsters. It arrived with certainty, with answers, with a man who promised to save everyone. And the world believed him. It's a chilling thought, isn't it? That the most monstrous evil could spend a lifetime hiding in plain sight, wearing the most perfect disguise. Let me know what you think of Father Vane's terrifying dedication in the comments below. And as always, lock your doors, turn off the lights, and stay vigilant. Thanks for watching.